Thank you for that introduction, Bill. Like Bill said, I'm Jessica, and I have the coolest job in the world because I get to lead the design team at One North. We have a talented group of brand and visual designers, motion designers, product designers, design system experts, and front-end developers. And so today, I want to talk to you about the fifth element, not the movie, ether. We're going to talk about how those invisible connections can transform motion into momentum. So to start, I designed this slide a couple weeks ago when I thought that this was what stargazing was going to look like last night, and Tanya wouldn't let me touch the slide, but you sort of get the idea. And I thought this activity last night was a perfect metaphor to start my talk. I'm not particularly into astrology or astronomy. I found it super helpful to have Garrett, the guide there, sort of pointing out, that's Venus, that's Jupiter, here's some of the constellations. He had that cool laser pointer, and drew those so that we could find shape and meaning in that overwhelming, sort of empty last night sky. But I know it's been a long day. We've had tons of amazing content. Thank you to my colleagues for very insightful, provoking talks. And I know I'm the last speaker, so I'm going to try something different. I condensed all 122 slides that I prepared today onto a single slide. And I thought, rather than slogging through all of it, I can just sort of put these up there and see if you all can connect those dots yourself. You're smart people. And so, maybe you can see how Puerto Rico and John Cleese and the moon landing and JFK all fit together. Do you all feel like you know what I was going to talk about with ether? Probably not, right? This looks like the start of a random talk, maybe about some conspiracy theories. It's unclear what the through line is. So, obviously, I'm not going to leave you with this. Stick with me for 121 more slides, and I promise I will draw the through line between these topics. I'll tell some stories, and hopefully you have a better understanding of what I mean by the ether advantage. We can actually stay on the topic of space exploration and rocket science. Who else was captivated by the Artemis II mission last month? It was so cool. We all came together. I loved the access that we had. I looked every photos and videos they had posted. Did you know that most of these were shot on the iPhone? My photos don't look like that. We learned about the term moonjoy, or earthshine, if you were at the stargazing last night. It was nothing short of incredible. We all got to rally behind these 4 incredible astronauts as they completed their mission. Even my kids got into it. This was their favorite part. Did you all catch the floating jar of Nutella? Can you imagine if you're in marketing for Nutella? The product placement, just exceptional. And then we all exhaled that collective sigh of relief when they successfully splashed down and completed their mission. But to really understand just how incredible this was, I need to take you back through some NASA history. So we're going to go back about 60 years to 1962. President Kennedy announces his ambition to put a man on the moon. He invites the best aerospace and engineering minds of the country to come together for the cause, and they do. Just to demonstrate the immense scale and ambition of this program, let me show you some stats. For the Saturn rocket alone, there were 3 million unique parts. At its peak, the program had 400,000 people working across 20,000 separate companies. So what we had were the most talented engineers in the world working in complete isolation from each other. Tragically, if you're a student of history, you know what comes next. Tragedy strikes in 1967, and a fire breaks out during a routine test and kills 3 astronauts. NASA grounds the whole program, launches a full investigation. What they found was no single point of failure. What they found was a cascade, dozens of decisions that had never been modeled together, and when they happened, proved catastrophic. The problem was never the talent or the technology. By all accounts, they were state-of-the-art. The problem was that nobody had owned the relationships between those components. So NASA regrouped, wanted to ensure this never happened again, and they looked to a man named George Low. Anyone heard of George Low, just by show of hands? No, good work, okay, a couple. George Low started a group called the NASA Configuration Control Board. Its sole purpose was to track all the changes that were made across the program and ensure nothing inadvertently affected something down the line. It built nothing. I don't know how this program shows up in an end-of-year report or on a spreadsheet, but it was critical, and it was a success. 2 years later, we land a man on the moon. So while we all know and we learn in school Neil Armstrong's name, it's really George Low whose contributions to the space program were invaluable and still being felt some 60 years later. NASA learned the hard way, but they came to understand the importance of the connections between all those disparate components. They called it systems engineering, but they didn't invent the concept, and while they did scale it, it's actually been around for thousands of years. The ancient Greeks had a different name for it. They called it ether. This is the mystical, magical fifth element that's invisible yet essential for harmony and function. You can think of it like a medium that fills space and connects all the other elements. Other names for it include luminiferous ether, quintessence, and one that Ryan said last night, my favorite, stardust. So today, we've heard talks about the four main elements, fire, earth, air, and water, and they share some common characteristics. They are tangible, discrete, and observable. So how does ether fit in there? It's not really like any of the others. So I think a better visual representation is something that envelops all of the elements, coheres them together. It's the glue that keeps them together. Ether is almost the opposite characteristics. Whereas the four main elements are tangible, ether is intangible. It has no shape, it's amorphous, yet it's essential for harmony and function. For much of the 19th century, ether was sort of the accepted prevailing scientific theory. It's ultimately disproven by the Michelson-Morley experiments, and the concept is eventually replaced by Einstein's concept of space-time, which emerges from his theory of relativity. I am out over my skis talking about physics, so we're going to pull this back to design in a second. But we will come back to this idea of space-time. So now that I've sort of defined ether for you, I want to contextualize this to what I see as a problem. I talk to organizations all the time, many of you, some of the world's most complex, largest organizations, and I'm noticing a theme. I heard it in the workshops. I think we are in an ether vacuum. Everyone's busier than ever, everyone's got more tools, and yet the outcomes don't represent that proportionally. No one is connecting the dots across the enterprise. If we take those four ancient elements, air, fire, earth, water, let's think of an analog for your own teams. For a lot of organizations, it might look something like this. You might have brand, product, marketing, and technology, all with their own talents and tool sets, all relatively working in silos, sometimes connected together, but I find the larger the organization, the taller the walls in between these groups are. And now we sprinkle some AI into the mix. And AI is awesome at a lot of things. It is accelerating our ability to do so much. And that's a neutral statement. It's not good or bad, but it's not a magic button, and it's not going to help everything cohere together. And that's where we need ether. And what I see happening, and what I want to pause on, is this idea of motion versus momentum. We are all living in a time where there's never been more motion. We've been busier than ever. But I don't see it translating directly into business momentum. And I think these are two very different things. You can run in place all day. You can be exhausted. You'll probably get hurt. I don't recommend it. And it won't get you from point A to point B. You can have a lot of motion and no momentum. I'm a visual person, so I brought an animation to show you. And I don't know about you all, but I have felt like this two from the left for the last couple months, just spinning and spinning and spinning. And I think if you think about the teams, people in your organization, people are working at different speeds, doing different things, often not connected together. And the problem with this is that over time, drift starts to happen. And all of a sudden, this guy is bumping into another team, maybe duplicating efforts, and then some team, definitely not design, is going rogue. And nothing's moving together. But everyone's still busy, they're stressed, but it's not resulting in business momentum. So the solution for this is Ether, wrapping it together, getting things to function in harmony together, and then you start to get business momentum. So that idea of motion versus momentum is something that I think can be solved with Ether. Now that we've talked about the Ether vacuum, let's move to a solution, because as Joe said, we're solutions-oriented people. I have 3 concrete ways you can approach injecting Ether into your organizations. I'll tell you them up front. They are not complicated, but they are rare, and they won't happen without intentionality. So I'm going to walk you through the who, the what, and the how to inject Ether into your organizations, how to build teams for cohesion, how to connect the dots, and then how to make those connections visible to everyone in your organization. We're going to start with the people part of this equation. For that, a cautionary tale. Who remembers how our basketball team did at the 2004 Athens Summer Olympics? This was a stacked roster. We had LeBron James, Allen Iverson, Tim Duncan, Dwayne Wade, 12 absolute superstars. On paper, a shoo-in for the gold medal. Who remembers how we did in the first game? A crushing loss to Puerto Rico, 73-92. We go on to lose again to Lithuania and Argentina and finish in a super disappointing bronze medal. You can see it on their faces here. So that's a cautionary tale. That's a team that had no Ether, a bunch of superstars, but no Ether. Let's contrast that with the 2026 Michigan Wolverines. I'm going to apologize in advance to the Ohio crew that's here. I didn't know you all would be here. I am actually from Toledo, so I'm halfway there with you. This team was coached by Dusty May. And for those of you that don't know me, you need to understand what a big Michigan fan I am. I went to undergrad there. I ran track and field there. I met my husband there. We got married on campus, and we have now fully indoctrinated our 3 children into the Michigan fandom. We waste no time even bringing the hat to the hospital with us. So I will look for any excuse to wedge a Michigan story into a talk, and this one fit perfectly. So we're going to go back to Dusty May, head coach in his 2nd season this year. And if you are a college sports fan, you know that NIL has really changed the game of how coaches assemble teams, changed the strategy quite a bit. And so I think Dusty's philosophy of how he put this roster together is an example of Ether. Here are some estimates, of course we don't know for sure, of total expenses for just the other Big Ten schools. You can see here, Michigan had a pretty modest salary scholarship expenditure. And actually, to give credit where credit is due, the team at the very bottom, Purdue, beat us in the Big Ten championship game. Now, spoiler, we go on to win the Natty, so it's fine. But this is proof that it's not just about star power, right? We learned from the 2004 Olympic team, just having the most expensive roster, just having the best of the best, doesn't guarantee a good outcome. And the reason having a team that's assembled like this, Dusty, I don't know if, I will not talk too much about it, but he went and grabbed guys that were playing at community college, guys that had ridden the bench at their last school. He saw the potential in him, and he knew they would play well together. This is important because in the Final Four game against Arizona, our best player got injured. We were still able to persevere, and we go on to win the national championship. When Dusty was asked about what the X factor of this year's team was, he said this. It was their ability to share the spotlight, to share their resources, put their teammates ahead of themselves. Guys that would give an assist instead of going for the point themselves. That team had Ether. There's lots of examples of this. I, of course, wanted to use the Michigan one, but after the Winter Olympics this year, after we won gold in hockey, I showed our kids the movie Miracle. It's another great example. Coach Herb Brooks, famously, when he was putting that roster together, turned away guys that were superstars. And of course, that team goes on, beats the Soviet Union in the penultimate match, and goes on to win gold. But let's say you're not a basketball coach or a hockey coach. Let's make this applicable to you. A couple months ago, as I was preparing for this talk, I saw this article in the Wall Street Journal about the underrated power of glue employees. I'm sure a couple of you have seen this. Glue employees are team members that don't look for the credit themselves, but cohere everyone together. They anticipate what others need, they smooth friction, and it's hard to quantify their value on paper. It's hard to look at a spreadsheet and see their contributions. They're invisible yet essential. Sound familiar? In another talk, Simon Sinek talks about the same concept of glue employees. Now, he doesn't use that term, but he's talking about the same thing. I'm sure a couple of you have seen it. This comes up on my Instagram feed about once a month. In this talk, he's talking about his work with the Navy SEALs. And he asks them, what do you look for when you're deciding who's going to be on SEAL Team 6? And they told him they evaluate based on two dimensions, performance and trust. Put another way, performance on the battlefield, performance off the battlefield. And he said it was sort of surprising. Not the first part. Of course, you don't want the low trust, low performance person on your team, obviously. And of course, everybody wants the high trust, high performer on the team. No surprise there. But what about this quadrant? What about the person who's high performing but low trust? The Navy SEALs told him that is a toxic team member and a toxic leader, and that person should be avoided. They would rather have someone with medium performance and high trust, or sometimes even low performance and high trust. Now, it's a relative scale. They're all Navy SEALs, but still, the point remains. And then Simon Sinek goes on to say, the problem with this is that business metrics don't evaluate the trust dimension. We have lots of ways to evaluate star performers, individual output. There's ways we can attach KPIs to those. You can see those quantified. But we don't have a way to measure trust. We don't have a way to quantify the value of glue employees. I don't have a solution for this. Maybe we need like NPS scores for people or something like that. But curious if anyone here has a good solution for that. And I think both matter. It can't just be good vibes. You can't just be high trust and not showing up for your job. But I think a lot of organizations need a calibration here. Glue employees are invisible yet essential. All right, so that's the who part. That's the people part of how to build teams for cohesion. The next part feels obvious, and this is what do you have to do? You have to connect the dots. It's so simple, it's deceptively simple. And I think the reason I put it in here and where I see organizations fall short is that they don't put intentionality behind it. They put up the slide at the beginning with all of the different topics, and they just assume you're smart enough, you can connect the dots. It doesn't happen on its own. To put it plainly, some or someone has to own making the connections. I already gave you one example of this. This was George Lowe for NASA. His job was to make those connections and own that. I am not a rocket scientist. I am a designer, and so I want to give you a design example. And I always come with a book every year. So this year, I have brought the NASA Graphics Standards Manual. It's actually Ryan's, so thank you for bringing it. But this was always in the office. It is truly amazing how comprehensive this 50-year-old brand book is. So if anyone wants to take a look at it later, I can show that to you. 50 years ago, we had to worry about logo usage and typography and spacing. And now, there's a bunch more dimensions, and so brand systems have evolved into much more complex design systems. It's not just the visual layer anymore. We do a lot of work with enterprise design systems, and so this is an example I have. Hopefully it will be relevant to some of you that work in this space, but for those of you that don't work in design systems, I think you'll still be able to extrapolate this to your own experiences. And what we see when we start talking with clients is typically, there's these kind of 4 dimensions, and we ask teams like, how's it going, how's it working? And they say, well, the design team owns the UI kit, lives in Figma. The engineers own the code. They won't name the components the same thing as the Figma files, so those start to break apart. We've got a documentation site. Nobody uses it. Why not? Well, it hasn't been updated in 3 years, so it's not really relevant. We've got some process and operations, but they don't show or demonstrate how we should use AI tools. And so what you end up having are design flows instead of a design system. The answer here is intentionality. It's wrapping Ether around all those different silos, getting them to work together. Now, this can be a person. It can be like a product owner. It can be a team. It's usually one of the first questions we ask when we're sort of diagnosing the health of an organization's design system. Who owns it? Some organizations give us the right answer. The answer is Shane. The answer is Warren. They own the design system. But often we get the answer that I started with, where it's like, well, it's no one's job. They kind of do it side of desk in between sprints when they have time. It won't happen. It will slowly, slowly drift. You will get those gears going rogue. And so I use this example because there's so much conversation, so much focus now on the latest and greatest AI tools. If you were all, hopefully, focused on the sessions this morning, I got an email at about 10 a.m. Figma has released Figma design agents. So now we all have to go learn that. And every day, every week, something new comes out. Did you know that? No? You do now. And I think we've got to focus on those. If you have questions about that, ask Nick. He was in the alpha for that, help them develop it. But I think the teams that will win will be the ones that properly calibrate their focus on the motion, but also on the momentum, on the ether, on chaining together the right processes, the right teams, and the right tools and technology. All right, so now you know you have to intentionally connect the dots. They won't just happen magically. This last one, how, is you have to make the connections visible. Now, a lot of organizations we work with, they do one, they do two, maybe parts of that, some better than others. Most organizations fall down on number 3. In fact, I heard somebody talking about this in one of the workshops. I heard a comment that said, our leadership knows the strategy, and it doesn't get disseminated down to us, and we're all running around, and we don't know what the priorities and strategy are. When I heard that, I thought they're not making those connections visible. They might be doing the first 2, but they're failing on the third one. Selfishly, this is where design and storytelling are real superpowers. So I want to dive into this a little bit more about how to get this done. Now, Ben stole my thunder just a little bit, but actually teed me up well, referencing this article about how companies are desperately seeking storytellers. The demand for this discipline has risen dramatically in the last few years. We can track that. We can look at some metrics, and this is in the article if you want to read it. One way they quantified this was they went back and looked at transcripts of earning calls the last couple years. In 2015, it was stated 147 times. And over 10 years, that number triples. Another stat, LinkedIn job posts last year alone that mentioned the word storyteller doubled. I've also seen this rise in executive storytelling roles. Started with Nike, actually back in the 90s. They were one of the first to do it. They had a guy named Nelson Ferris, whose job it was to connect dots and tell stories. Microsoft follows suit, and then, Apple, PayPal, some of the other large companies. I even heard a client in this room is introducing a storytelling senior leadership role. A couple months ago, I saw this job posting from Anthropic for a presentation design lead, and one of the top skills it needed was visual storytelling. I thought that was telling that arguably the best AI tooling company in the world still needs a human to do this part of the job. We have to make those connections visual and visible. I'll give you an example. Pop quiz, what's this slogan? Good. Just do it. 3 words. I want to tell you about the origin of this tagline, or slogan, whatever it is. In 1987, advertising firm Wieden & Kennedy was tasked with developing a series of TV commercials for this campaign. It needed to cover everything from running to walking, cross-training, basketball, women's fitness. And so Wieden & Kennedy had each spot developed by a different creative team. The night before the client presentation, Dan Wieden, head creative founder of Wieden & Kennedy, said, I felt we needed some unity to the work. So he suggested the tagline, just do it. He got some pushback. Creatives in his agency questioned if we needed it. Nike even questioned it. I read Phil Knight's exact classic client feedback to him was, "We don't need that shit." And so he pushed on. He really believed in it. And he told them, look, I think we need it. I believe we have too many disparate commercials that don't add up to anything. Trusted him, they believed in him, and they said, fine, we'll try it. So obviously, Just Do It goes on. It's been used for 40-some years now. It's probably generated hundreds of billions of dollars of revenue for Nike across athletes, across sports, some with amateurs. It's on their merchandise. It's on their packaging. It's everywhere. It's a great example of connecting a bunch of disparate parts of a company and making them cohere. It's a great example of Ether. Now, I'm not saying everybody in here needs a tagline or a slogan, although if you do, our brand team is happy to talk to you. I am saying that you need to put intentionality behind making those connections visible and easy to remember. So I've now talked about who, what, and how to solve for this ether vacuum, but there's one more piece I want to talk about. I mentioned at the beginning that Einstein's idea of space-time is ultimately what replaced ether, and I feel like I've comprehensively covered the space part of this. We've looked at NASA, we've got the floating Nutella, we're good there. The time piece, and there was a question earlier today about the time part of this. So before I wrap up, let's quickly look at one more example. We're actually going to go back to the Nike example, and I'm going to put up a quote that you've already seen. This is what Dan Wieden said about the development of Just Do It, and I want to highlight this part. He added this the night before the client presentation. He wasn't late. This isn't permission to be late, ever, but I think this is telling. And I thought this was an interesting part of the story, and I didn't know why. And then in some of the rehearsals, Jen Lill talked about John Cleese's great speech to the School of Visual Arts, so I went and watched it. And lo and behold, there's an awesome, awesome part where John Cleese talks about this exact phenomenon. He calls it productive procrastination. This is the idea of knowing how long you have to complete a task and then using most of that time to do it. He said it's human nature. Most people, it's uncomfortable to have an unresolved problem. So if you think of a solution, you can check it off your to-do list. You can be done with it. But truly creative people can sit in that discomfort. Their subconscious can keep working on it until it gets better. I'll give you an example. When John Cleese was writing for Monty Python, he was writing a script with one of his buddies, and they were working on it together, and he wanted to take it home and refine it. So he did, but he lost the draft. So then as the deadline approached, he had to rewrite it from memory, and this was a couple days later. His brain had continued to work on it, so he was able to write it, and then he later found that first draft. He compared the two and found that the second version was tighter, funnier, better in every measurable way. And his theory was that his brain, in its subconscious, had continued to work on it in the background. And his point is that the discomfort of that unresolved problem was productive. It was doing something. That's the time where that synthesis is made. And the problem with this is we are in an ether vacuum, and we are in a period where that time, that in-between time, has been eliminated. The first solution is one prompt away. You can vibe code an app that nobody wants over the weekend. And so the next time you're in a complex, nuanced problem, resist the temptation to go with the first solution. Sit with that discomfort. Sit with the problem. I promise you the answer will come to you. All right, I'll wrap this up with some closing thoughts. Ether was thought of as this magical, mystical, X-factor element. I hope I've shown you the magic is not any one element, it's not any one person, it's not any one tool, it's not any one technology. The magic is in how we put it all together. The magic is in the ether. Ether is what changes silos to systems. It's what converts motion to momentum. So let's close where we started by gazing up at the stars. Hopefully now, this slide makes a bit more sense in that I've drawn the through line through this. Thank goodness Ryan didn't start the conference yesterday with all of the topics we were going to cover today, because it would have been random and confusing and overwhelming. So I think you can see the importance of connecting the dots, making those connections visible. Part of what I think is so valuable about the assembly is it forces us to take a step back, to take some time away, and gives you a chance to connect those dots. So hopefully that's what today has done for you. Hopefully that's what tomorrow will do for you. I hope that this has given you some time away to reflect and connect those dots, and hopefully you're leaving fresh with new ideas, a little bit of moon joy, and earthshine. Thank you.
We're good here? Yep, all right. Initial questions for Jessica.
Softball ones, please.
Going once. Oh, okay, I got to pick on somebody again. Doug? That's what you get for sitting in the front row, man. I'll put a question to you. Do you feel like there's, in your team at Peacock, does the ether exist?
Okay. Yeah, I think we struggle with it a little bit. I think it's a pretty siloed overall NBC Universal, like the larger Peacock org. I think my team is pretty good at it. My team, design team, product, we're a little separate from engineering. There could be some ether, a lot of ether maybe there. And that's one of the things that I take on for my team, is to try to be that gap between design and engineering a little bit. But it's a struggle. It's hard. They're geographically in a different place, and it's something I think though that our design systems work can hopefully get to. But yeah.
I'll build on what you said. You feel like you've taken it on. Are there others in the room feel like for your teams or across your teams, you've taken on that role at your org? Yep, Jake? What say you, Jake? And I'd like to hear Steve too.
Yeah, I think, at least in my role in marketing technology, there's a lot of IT speak happening, and then a lot of people that don't understand that. I've been lucky enough to be able to understand both worlds a little bit, and I think that has helped us. Granted, we still have our challenges, don't get me wrong, we're not perfect, but that's sort of the role I've been able to take on.
Hand it over to Steve.
Yeah, I would say within my team, I feel like we have really good ether. I mean, we have the glue people for sure. I didn't have a name for it, but that's awesome. And we have the how. We have a dedicated design system team, which had we didn't always, but we suffered both the things you pointed out before we had the dedicated team, and then the goodness afterwards. So again, a way to name that. So I think within my team we have it's really solid. It's just we're just one component in the larger organization, which isn't always so great. So yeah, I think it's on the microcosm we're doing pretty well. Macro, work to be done.
So, and you're going to hand the microphone 2 rows back to Brandon Carroll because he raised his hand.
We have no issues, Bill.
But here is something that might signify that a person is that glue or has some components of that, like you guys raised your hand. Brandon Carroll, for those that don't know him, a lot of times when you're like, man, how are we going to get that done? Who do we talk to? Let's call Brandon. Like that signifies that could be one of your glue people. So what's your take on that, Brandon?
Individually, right, One North, I think you'll see here, or you're seeing here this week, the ether's really strong. These guys have worked together for a long, long time. They play off each other. They can bring something like this together in a really polished and professional way. But they operate a lot differently than our parent company, which I'm part of, which is a traditional IT services company. So it's been challenging to bring those things together in some comprehensive way. And we've made a lot of progress, but it's an ongoing, evolving thing that's constant.
Cool. All right, Jessica, a question for you. Who's responsible for Ether?
Everyone in this room. I think Ether could almost be a metaphor for leadership. Like, I think leaders are the only ones in the position to have the purview of what everyone's doing, what teams are working on, and we need to be the ones to gel those initiatives together. It's our responsibility to communicate it out. I think that was a great sort of observation you made in the workshop session, that like your leadership, they're aligned on the strategy, but they don't communicate it out to you, and so then you're left spinning your gears, and other teams are. So it's our job. If we're in this room, I think it's our job to inject the ether.
I like that. Pass the microphone. Addie?
Sorry, Christiana. This one's Addie.
Christiana? So close.
It's your only miss.
By proximity. I really liked how you gave this work a name that is respectable, because I think a lot of times we hear it as the thankless work, or like people's passion projects, and I think there's a lot of names actually that maybe are signals that you have a glue person. We hear it a lot in design ops. I think you hear the people who are like identifying these new projects that maybe we didn't have, and they're trying to connect people. But we do really struggle with the visibility piece, and I'm curious if anyone here or in your experience, yeah.
I actually have a good
Pick on you.
example. At One North, so I'll give Ryan credit, we have a monthly senior leadership meeting, and every group leader comes and we just say what we're doing, what our challenges are, what our cool stuff we're working on, and the only purpose is to surface those connections. And always what happens from it is, like the other week, I said like, oh, we're pursuing, this client wants us to build them a custom dam on a new CMS. Kat messaged me and she was like, Jen Little has built tons of dams. You got to connect with Jen on this. And so it allows us to make those connections. And I think we're all distributed, we're all busy working on our own stuff. And without that meeting once a month for us to just learn what our peers are doing across the business, we lose that connectivity. So I think that's, sometimes it can be a person, sometimes it can be a ritual, like a meeting like that. Sure. He's going to take credit for this because it was his idea.
I'm not going to take credit for it. Not at all. I think that that meeting was born out of kind of our DNA. I think one of the things that makes One North work really well and special is our multidisciplinary approach. This idea that we don't solve problems alone and in silos. Our strategists think like technologists, our technologists think like designers. When we think around corners, that creates connections that can help solve problems faster. So that meeting was literally a way to just pay off that idea. And I think the point there is, a lot of the examples you showed, Just Do It, it's a purpose-driven tagline, right? It's not just a brand statement. It is an ethos. It's an operating system for the company. And I think for us, that's multidisciplinary. And it shows up in meetings like that. I think the challenge for this room is figuring out how do you make those connections and then tie it up in a way that is very easy for everyone to buy into. And it's that
Three
buy-in
words,
piece.
just do it.
Yeah, it's that buy-in piece I think that's incredibly difficult.
Awesome. Anyone else? Dimitri, Shaylee, FINRA team? Yes. What do you got? Ooh.
Well, in theory, we should all have...
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, yeah. He said, how do we get more time for that? In theory, we should all have lots more time because AI is making us all so much more efficient at our job. We should have so much extra money to pay people to do this, but obviously that's not what happens. I think you just have to put intentionality behind it. If it's a passion project, if it's because one person is an exceptional glue employee and they do it out of the goodness of their heart, it won't continue and it won't scale. So I think you have to invest in it. You have to have the vision that investing in time is going to produce a higher quality output at the end, like the John Cleese example. So it takes good leadership to agree with that and protect that time for you.
All right, anybody else? All right, awesome. Jessica, thank you so much. We got.
This isn't worth it. I just wanted to point out that there will be no other conference in the history of the world as pro-meeting as this one ended up being. This is our revolutionary idea. I want you to all take that.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Jessica.